Welcome to the Edge podcast. I am Christy Ogle, and this is usually the Christy and Chip show, but Chip is not here today. He is enjoying a little R&R. So today I am tackling the life cycle of a business. In 1976, Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak opened this little business in their garage. It was actually Jobs' garage, and Jobs had to actually sell his amazing VW bus to finance Apple I. So in 1976, Apple was created. It was born. And thank God for those two men, because they have changed our lives dramatically. Now, in 1976, it goes into this infancy stage, and Apple I sells for $666.66 in July of 1976 out of their little garage. Now, it's starting to walk and talk on its own, this business called Apple, when in 1983, they developed Apple Lisa. It was the first PC with a graphic user interface. In 1984, it then became a teenager, and it debuted the Macintosh computers geared towards professionals, teachers. It came out during this amazing Super Bowl commercial, and it actually defined Apple's brand. When you watch this commercial still today, you realize, like, this is when it really started to happen. It went up the stages of the life cycle. In 1985, it became a young adult. You know, Apple was everywhere. It was in the schools. That was the PCs that people actually used. Even when I was in teaching, we still used those old Macintoshes just 10, 12 years ago. So it became a young adult in 1985, and there was this power struggle between the famous John Sculley, who was with Pepsi and then came over to Apple, and they forced Jobs out. He actually resigned in 1985. Now, they started to get to this teenage kind of stage, this past the teenage stage, past the young adult stage, where they got into this zone of maximization. A business can only stay in this zone for a certain amount of time. Now, it continued to grow Apple with the Macintosh computer, but they came out with the new laptop in the late 1980s, early 1990s, and it was the first of the golden age of Mac. But it was a struggle in the 90s for Macintosh and also Windows. They kind of fought. So Windows introduced the IBM that actually surpassed Mac in sales. So then what happened is it started to decline. A life cycle of a business is just like a life cycle of us, of individuals. Now, the company jumped back into midlife in 1997 when they actually brought Steve Jobs back. Thank you, because it changed the course of our lives. And he started to turn the company back around to where it needed to be. He began to revolutionize Apple's brand and product line with a partnership with his competitor, Microsoft. Then in 1995 to 1996, there was major layoffs at Apple, and many of the developers stopped building for them again. So they started to decline. How did Apple come back? We'll come back to that towards the end of the podcast. So are you ever surprised when there's seasons in life? Are you ever surprised when it is 125 degrees outside in August and it's 100% humidity? No. No matter where you live, you're never surprised because of the heat in August in the United States, because we know there's seasons. In February and March, are we ever surprised when there's freezing temperatures and there's snow and there's ice and there's issues that come up? No, because it's winter, right? We know that after winter comes spring and there's this beautiful unveiling of the flowers, and then summer hits and we enjoy it for a while, and then it's so hot, right? And then we're ready for fall, which is fall and spring are people's favorite seasons, and then we go into winter again. Are we ever surprised 10 years down the road that there's 4 seasons? Absolutely not. But people are so surprised at the life cycles of a business. They don't realize that there's a life cycle of a business, just like there's a life cycle for you and I and what we're going through. Some of you listening to this might be in your midlife. Some of you listening might be in your aging life, ready for institutionalization. But some of you might be mature and going through the zone of maximization, the best parts of life. So I wanted to quickly go over the 10 stages of the life cycle of a business and knowing the road ahead in your business. The first stage, like Apple had, was the birth of the business. The moment you take on that risk of owning a business, but it is meeting your own needs. You have a business and it meets your needs. You have a job, basically, in the very beginning. You start managing yourself and the things that you need to do. Then it grows a little bit. It goes into the infancy. This is a race for survival. 95% of all businesses don't make it in the first 5 years. Of those 5% that make it, only 50% make it to the 10-year mark. And then, like, you have to be a gladiator in business because you're going out there every single day to get killed. You're my kind of people. If you play in a sport, you know the odds are against you, but you know you've got what it takes to make it, right? So that infancy is a race for survival. Maybe in the infancy of your business, you hire a person. It is you incorporated. You are the person running the business. You focus on the production of the services or products that you have. And then cash flow is a significant issue in the infancy of your business. Nobody I talk to in business says, you know what, I got plenty of money. Definitely not in the infancy of business or in the birth. Usually you have something and then you launch it and then it starts to grow and you have to feed it, just like you do a baby. You move on to toddlerhood, the third stage of a business, and this is management by crisis. It feels like you're putting out fires all day long. The business is walking and talking on its own, and you've started to build a management team. Now, the business and every decision that is made is solely up to you. It's still you managing people. Everything in this stage of growth for a toddler of business is accelerating. So it works very, very quickly. Cash flow is still a concern when you're a toddler in business. Then you start having a business that's a teenager, and this is where some major issues can come up. Crisis is created by the management. That's you. You develop a professional team to start managing your business. Cash flow's not as big as a problem when you're a teenager, but the growth is focused on innovation. And you have to be very rampant at innovating your business. More means better. Go leaders don't even usually attend those meetings. So they become overly confident and their ego starts to grow and the trouble is imminent. Then you've got the driving thing down as a teenager. You start to go on to the young adult. You're beginning to anticipate the future in your business, which is the superpower in business, anticipation. You make more committed choices as a young adult, and you limit what you focus on. You focus on what's making you money, what needs to be fixed or done in the company, so you can focus on those systems, because systems are so important in business. But as a teenager, toddler, infant, and birth, people don't realize that systems help you run the business much more efficiently. You start to redefine what success is long term with your business, and you start to settle down and get serious about your business, and you might rebirth your identity of your business because you didn't even really know what you were doing when you birthed it. If you're lucky enough to get onto the next stage of business, it's called the zone of maximization. You start to level off. You have a mature business. And the sad thing is some businesses come at this, within 5 years, 8 years, 10 years, and some don't hit it for 20 or 30 years. Remember, Apple didn't make it to that zone of maximization that where everything, profitability is great, sales, profits are growing. They didn't get there for 15 years. You start to develop the system, you start to implement the system, you start reaping the rewards of owning a business, because sometimes it's just paychecks of the heart. It's not real paychecks. With my business, for the first 5 years, 2 years of it, I didn't get paid anything. So you start to run this business with a management team. The organization knows who they are as a whole and not just putting out fires. They are not what they used to be. They've started having these amazing allowances for the management, and they grow it in a sustainable way. Your business is run by the management team. Now, remember, Apple started to go that midlife, that evaluation. Things start to break down. I've seen this with people that have been business owners for 30 or 40 years. They think they're going to be able to sell their business, but they're solopreneurs. It doesn't work without them. So they start to age, stuff starts to break down, starts to get smaller and smaller with your sales and profit. You can either rejuvenate your business at this time, or you can let your business start to die. If your business is dying, you can't sell it, which is why most of us got into business. If you're starting to age your business, if you're at that midlife crisis point, you need to bring it back to the zone of maximization. Then it starts to age, having that cane, right? And it starts to break down and it starts to accelerate really fast. And there's this state of denial. There's no problems. They don't really exist. You start thinking, I'm the victim. I'm the victim of coronavirus. I'm the victim of a government shutdown. I'm a victim because there's no employees out there. There's not enough resources. No, you're not resourceful enough. You can make it through the aging part of business, because with Apple, they started to age in 1995 and 1996, but they brought it back, which is very seldom happens in business, that you bring it back to the zone of maximization. Apple has had this amazing way to take it over the edge and then bring it back. Then it's institutionalization, your talent's left. The organization is artificially alive. Maybe you've subsidized it. It's artificial life that's being breathed into the business. And you keep alive these systems and rules, but it's no longer innovative. You're serving the needs of the community, not serving the needs of the business. And then the last stage is death. The vision is no longer sustainable and there's no people to support it. So again, the 10 stages were birth, infancy, toddler, teenager, young adult, zone of maximization, midlife evaluation, aging, institutionalization, and death. Remember though, who we were talking about earlier, Apple actually came back. How did they get the company young again? They brought back the entrepreneurship. There's 3 different types of people in business. 1 is the skilled artist and producer. 2 is the entrepreneur that has the big idea. And the 3rd is management or leadership. They got rid of John Scully and brought back Jobs in the early 1990s after he'd started Pixar and then sold it. In 1998, the first iMac came out. I love the iMac. I have several of them. In 2009, they evolved the iMac 5, which changed the game. 2001 to the present, they came up with this music distribution device that changed the entire world. Everything's at your fingertips now. Any song you'd ever want to listen to, it was the most successful music distribution device in history, the iPod. It disrupted the music industry by $2 billion with a B dollars when the iPod was announced. It changed the way that we listen and absorb music for the rest of our lives. In 2009, they evolved the iMac 5 again. Love the iMac. 2007, the first iPhone came out. I was standing in line for 6 hours for my first iPhone. And then in 2010, this thing they said would never work because it wasn't a laptop or a phone. It was an iMac. One of the number 1 things that people use in their business. The iPad was invented. And then in 2015, they kept it young again with the first Apple iWatch. So my question to you is, what are you in the life cycle of your business? What do you need to do if you're starting to age and get into that institutionalization in midlife? How could you make your business young again? New perspectives, new voices, new people you bring in to help you start to not age your company anymore. This was the 10 stages of the life cycle of a business. I did not come up with it by any means. Tony Robbins taught me this stuff, so I've got to give props to the big man. You've got to know your road ahead in business, or you're going to get slaughtered. To be a gladiator in business, you have to know business. So this was the 10 stages of the life cycle of a business. Thank you for listening to the Edge podcast. I am Christy Ogle, one of the co-founders of the Edge podcast. Keep listening.